tricking so many Americans into believing that getting rid of the Department of Education is a good thing has got to be one of the most heinous crimes against Americans. The marginal dollars that you think you're gonna save, which, by the way, you're not. What a joke. They fucking played you so hard. Education, access to resources that enable education is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves. To strip that away from people, it's disgusting. I'm smiling, but it's not funny, and I actually genuinely feel bad for those people. This is not one of those like dancing on your grave kind of things. No, I feel so bad for you.
The debate over dismantling the Department of Education is more than just a policy dispute. It's a fundamental question about the future of American learning. While some argue that eliminating the department would reduce bureaucracy and return control to local communities, others warn that it would destabilize public education, jeopardize funding for critical programs, and weaken protection for vulnerable students. Beyond budget concerns, this move could deepen educational disparities, shifting the burden onto states without a clear plan for maintaining national standards. As the country grapples with the challenges of modernizing education, the real question is whether dismantling the department would solve existing problems or simply create new ones. Hello guys, welcome back to Inside Republic. Kindly like and share the video so that the algorithm can recommend it to a broader audience, and that helps with the growth of the channel and page. If you haven't subscribed or followed us, kindly do so. And to those that have, I'm truly grateful. Let's watch the following video clips, then I'll be back with my commentary.
Hi, it's Lori again. So last night, Donald Trump fired half of the Department of Education, his first step in his master plan to dismantle our education system. Look, I wouldn't be where I am today without the education I got in Lowell public schools, and I'm proud to send my two daughters to public schools today. But Donald Trump's action threatens to rip away the opportunities so many of us had and that our children are getting today. Now, for decades, Republicans in Washington have tried to redirect funding for public schools to vouchers for private and religious schools instead, a policy that will overwhelmingly benefit wealthy families at the cost of children in working class cities and towns across our country. And that doesn't even begin to touch on how important the Department of Education is for children with disabilities, to ensure that they have the opportunity to go to school and get a quality education just like other kids their age. Firing the people who serve our country and our children is a terrible decision, and it's another one that we're going to fight back against together. We're working to make sure lawsuits are filed as soon as possible so that we can stop this, and I'll keep you posted once I have an update to share.
The most uneducated and misinformed people in the United States are currently cheering for the dismantling of the Department of Education. If that doesn't clearly illustrate the condition that the United States is in, I don't know what does. And that condition, it's not great again. Not at all.
The Department of Education has long played a pivotal role in shaping the legacy of public schooling in America, ensuring access, funding, and protection for millions of students. However, dismantling it threatens to erode that legacy, redirecting crucial public funds towards private and religious institutions while leaving public schools struggling for resources. This shift not only undermines the principle of free and fair education, but also raises serious legal challenges as states grapple with potential lawsuits over discrimination, funding discrepancies, and constitutional concerns. Despite these looming consequences, some celebrate the department's downfall without fully grasping the chaos and inequity that could follow. Rather than dismantling a system that has safeguarded education for decades, efforts should focus on reforming and strengthening it to better serve future generations.
What's going to happen to student loans when Donald Trump signs the executive order to dismantle the Department of Education? Reportedly, they have been struggling to find somebody else to take up those loans, and nobody else want to touch it. Do that mean like people don't have to pay back their student loans? It's like when you have something go to collections. The company you originally owed that money to sold that debt to another company. I don't have to pay that shit. You already sold it. That's no longer my responsibility. You wasn't even supposed to. I don't owe anything to you. So like if I owe money to AT&T and then AT&T shuts down, who do I owe that money to now? Matter of fact, I'll tell you what you do. Get Elon to go in there and start pressing buttons. Just deleting shit. Let's just see what happens. Just the only button he can press is delete. Okay? So just let him go in there for the Department of Education and just delete. Just let him go in that bitch and just tap delete until his little heart gets full.
It's time to speak up. Today, March 20th, 2025, is the day education is unalived in the United States. Trump is signing an order abolishing the Department of Education. Now, this is because an uneducated populace is easier to control. He doesn't want us educated. He doesn't want us thinking. He doesn't want us reading, because now we have officially gone from a constitutional republic with democratic principles to a dictatorship. We are living in an authoritarian regime now, people, and there is no denying it. There's no denying it. Additionally, you know who loses almost 100% of their funding in schools under this program? Special needs kids. Special needs kids, and I'm getting reports from around the country, are already getting letters from their schools saying that they will no longer be offered their services. That's right. That's what he's doing. What are we going to do about it? Go out there and love your neighbor.
Dismantling of the Department of Education raises pressing questions about the fate of student loans, leaving borrowers uncertain about whether their debt will be forgiven or if repayment terms will shift unpredictably. With no clear plan for handling federal student aid, millions could find themselves in financial limbo, unsure of how to proceed. Meanwhile, concerns grow that this move is less about education reform and more about exerting top-down control, bypassing democratic processes in a way that feels dangerously authoritarian. Adding to the chaos, some families of special needs children have already received devastating notices that their funding will be cut, leaving vulnerable students without critical support. Rather than providing solutions, the department's dismantling appears to be creating confusion, fear, and instability in a system that millions rely on.
Donald Trump just signed an executive order to shut down the Department of Education because he says that the federal government should not be able to control American schools. The experiment of controlling American education through federal programs and dollars and the unaccountable bureaucracy must end. But the problem is the Department of Education doesn't do any of those things. The three main functions of the Department of Education are student aid, funding for poor schools, and funding for students with disabilities. Because I show my work, I will show you exactly how I know that. If you want to learn how to find out things like this for yourself, follow along. As always, we want primary source info. So I'm going to search Department of Education funding breakdown, and I'm going to click right here, which brings you here where you can see how every dollar in the Department of Ed is spent. You scroll down, press the bar charts. Their top spending goes to Office of Federal Student Aid, next goes to Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, third goes to Office of Special Education. Then you can click each of these to expand on them. So Office of Federal Student Aid is pretty self-explanatory. It's a federal student aid program and student financial assistance. And then the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, which is the second biggest item in their budget. So within that, the top item is education for the disadvantaged. Then we're going to search Department of Education, education for the disadvantaged, and we're going to click here. And we see that education for the disadvantaged is a federal program to give Title I funding to poor schools. The Department of Education's number one budget item is to help students be able to afford school. Their number two budget item is to help poor students in poor schools. Their number three budget item is the Office of Special Education. And when we expand it, we see it's Special Education and Rehabilitation Services. Then we'll search the Office of Special Education and the Department of Education. We see that their goal is to lead the nation's efforts to improve outcomes for children with disabilities, birth through 21, and their families, ensuring access to fair, equitable, high-quality education and services. It administers the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Trump's current Secretary of Education, when asked, what does this stand for, didn't know. So tell me how you want young people to be able to invest in the economy and the housing market and make America great when you're going to privatize their student loan. Because yes, that's what Trump is suggesting we do. How do you think rates of crime and poverty and homelessness are going to be impacted by you defunding poor schools? And if you don't care about students with disabilities from a moral and human standpoint, What do you think is going to happen to your child's education when your community is now in charge of the specialized care and funding that many of these students need in order to complete their education? And you have now made it to the end of the video. And if you are still here, can I point out that I just watched the video and was going to post it, and I realized my head just looks tilted the whole time because it's a green screen, but I'm not just with a tilted head, I'm laying on some pillows because, you know, the state of the world, existential dread, you just gotta have a little lie down sometimes.
The push to dismantle the Department of Education is often justified by claims of excessive bureaucracy and inefficiency, yet these arguments overlook the department's crucial role in maintaining national education standards and protecting students. Critics fail to acknowledge that simply eliminating the department does not erase its responsibilities. It only shifts them to leaders who may be unprepared or uninformed about their scope. The uncertainty surrounding incoming education officials, some of whom lack experience or clear vision, further complicates the transition. Additionally, privatizing student loans could expose borrowers to predatory lending practices, stripping away protections that federal oversight provides. Meanwhile, shifting education policy entirely to state control raises concerns about sensitive communities being subject to local political agendas, potentially deepening inequalities. Rather than dismantling the system, efforts should focus on reforming and strengthening it to serve all students effectively. That's it for now. Until next time, take care.